House Committee on Matters Lands. And finally, person to Standing Orders number 44, subsection 2C.
Members, we now have capacity to transact business. Clerk.
Order number 1, administration of oath. Order number 2, communication from the chair. Order number 3, messages. Order number 4, petitions. Order number 5, papers.
Majority Leader.
Give me the mic. Yeah, thank you. Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following papers on the table of the House today, Monday, December 02, 2024. Reports of the Auditor General and financial statement for the years ended 30th June 2021, 30th June 2022, and 30th June 2023, and the certificates therein in respect of number 1, Naivasha High School, number 2, Bahari Girls Secondary School, number 3, Kirima Girls High School, 4, Muranga High School, 5, Kabare Girls High School, 6, Bishop Okoth Girls Mbanga Secondary School, 7, Musharage Secondary School, 8, Isiolo Barracks Secondary School, 11, Kituvu Secondary School, 12, Gashege Secondary School, 13, Shura Secondary School, 14, Loreto High School, Matunda, 15, Moi Girls School, Nairobi, 16, Broadway High School, 17, Kivani, 18, Mumandu Secondary School, number 19, Senior Chief Muguti Secondary School, number 20, Kambi Mawe High School, number 21, St. Stephen's Luanga Secondary School, number 22, Udhiru Girls High School, number 23, St. Joseph High School, Githunguri, number 24, Defki Ruiru Township Secondary School, number 25, Chebara Girls Secondary School, and number 26, Santa Maria Girls Secondary School, Cheputulon. Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and I beg to lay.
Thank you. Can the Speaker's Kamkunji on implementation of Universal Health Care, UHC. Honorable members, as you may be aware, the enactment of the Social Health Insurance Act number 16 of 2023 established 3 health funds, namely Care Fund, PHCF, the Social Health Insurance Fund, SHIF, and the Emergency Chronic and Critical Illness Fund, ECCIF, all managed by the Social Health Authority. hope is a very temporary problem. Not even the portable mics can be used now. So remain in your seats for the next couple of minutes as we see if they can be able to fix it. You can hear me, but the Hansard will not pick my voice.
Do you have another microphone?
Members, at least now the portable mic is working. Honorable members, I was making a short communication about the health-related Kamkunji. That was at paragraph 2. The said act provided a framework that succeeded the NHIF with the intention of enabling the government to achieve its commitment of providing comprehensive universal health care to all citizens. Honorable members, the Minister of Health rolled out the UHC program on 1st October 2024, and the progress has been encouraging despite a few challenges. Indeed, several members of this House have voiced concerns from the electorate regarding some of the teething problems in the implementation of the program. In this regard, honorable members have received and acceded to a request from the Cabinet Secretary for Health seeking to engage with all honorable members on various matters relating to implementation of UHC program. Honorable members, from the National Assembly to approach the chair.
If they leave, we might not be able to pray enough for a mission.
Members, we will struggle on with what we have. The clerk is directed to get at least another 2-3 portable mics that can help. So call out the next orders.
Okay. It's okay? Okay. Okay.
Have papers to be laid. Chairperson, Departmental Committee on Social Protection.
Thank you. Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following papers on the table of the House to date Tuesday, 2nd December 2024, report of the Departmental Committee on Social Protection on its consideration of the Persons with Disability Bill, Senate Bill number 7 of 2023. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you. Chairperson, Departmental Committee on Finance. Chairperson, Departmental Committee on Finance and National Planning. Kimani. Who is a member of that committee? Hillary, do you have the papers to lay? I'm told the chairman is on the way, so let's. Before we go to statements, honorable members, let's dispose of order number 8. Call out order number 8.
Order number 8, the Parliamentary Pensions Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 5 of 2023. Question to be put.
Take your seats, members on their feet. Take your seat. The member talking to Muriu. Kiborek, take your seat. Honorable members, I now put the question at order number 8, which is that the Parliamentary Pensions Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 5 of 2023, be now read a second time. As members of that opinion say aye. Will those of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
A bill for an act of parliament to amend the Parliamentary Pensions Act and for connected purposes.
Irene Mayaka, if we go to the starter bill, you are supposed to be replying. How much time do you require? 5 minutes. So, okay, call out order number 9.
Order number 9, the startup bill, Senate Bill number 14 of 2022. Mover to reply.
Irene Mayaka, can you reply?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I take this opportunity to reply to the startup bill, Senate Bill number 14 of 2022. Honorable Speaker, on behalf of myself and my co-sponsor, the Honorable Senator Crystal Asige, I'd like to take this opportunity to first of all thank the Honorable Mary Kaitani, who on behalf of the Trade Committee was the seconder to this motion. I'd also like to thank the Majority Leader and Minority Whip, together with the members who really supported this particular motion. Honorable Speaker, for the purposes of the members who are not present, this particular bill is set to ensure that we do have a set structure for registration and support of the startups that are in this country, and especially those by the young people. Honorable Speaker, one of the things that is going to be very beneficial is that this is going to support the incubation and also give fiscal and non-fiscal incentives to the startups of this country. And Honorable Speaker, when we speak about startups, we're not just talking about technology-based. We also mean startups that are entrepreneurial in nature, those that are scientific, and Honorable Speaker, even those that are in the fashion business. Because, Honorable Speaker, we do acknowledge the fact that more than 70% of our country is made up of young people. And we want to encourage young people to be able to own their own businesses, to become CEOs, and for them to be able to actually start supporting people not only within national government, but even at county government level. Honorable Speaker, some of the benefits that are going to be emanated from this particular bill is among them tax incentives. We are also proposing to have tax holidays. We are proposing to have startups being exempted from registration fees, a proper framework for them, protection of copyrights, Honorable Speaker, because this is one area that a big number of people who are in the innovation space have really complained about. So the startup bill is going to enable Kenyans to be able to have protection of copyrights and promotion of national awareness of the startups. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, as I conclude, I just want to urge the members to really support this particular bill. It's going into third reading, and I know the Trade Committee has already intimated that they are going to bring a couple of amendments to it. So I encourage every member to have a look at it so that by the time it comes for third reading, we do have a bill that is very comprehensive and that will help the people of Kenya. I submit. Thank you. I beg to move. Thank you. I beg to reply. Thank you.
Thank you, Irene. Honorable members, order members on their feet. Take your seats. Order. Honorable members, I'll now put a question at order number 9. Is the system back? Okay. Which is that the starter bill, Senate Bill number 14 of 2022, be now read a second time. As members of that opinion say aye. Aye. Will those of the second opinion or contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
A bill for an act of parliament to provide a framework to encourage growth and sustainable technological development, new entrepreneurial ownership, employment, create a more favorable environment for innovation, attract Kenyan talents and capital, and for connected purposes.
Now we go to statements.
Order number 7, questions and statements.
Agnes Pareo. Wait for the mic. Give her the mic. There you are.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. And Honorable Speaker, pursuant to the provision of Standing Orders 44-2C, I rise to request for a statement from the chairperson of the Departmental Committee on Defense, Intelligence, and Foreign Relations regarding the disappearance of Mr. John Maina Wanjiro, holder of passport number BK433679 in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Honorable Speaker, Mr. John Maina Wanjiro has been residing in Saudi Arabia since May 2023, when he moved there for employment. However, his family, with whom he maintained regular communication, claims to have lost contact with him on the 25th June 2024, raising concerns about his safety and whereabouts. Since then, the family has made several efforts to contact him, but have been unsuccessful. The situation is further exacerbated by the fact that the family does not have the means to look for him. Honorable Speaker, it is against this background that I request for a statement from the chairperson of the Departmental Committee on Defense, Intelligence, and Foreign Relations on the following: the whereabouts of Mr. John Maina Wanjiro, holder of passport number BK436079, who went missing in Saudi Arabia on the 25th June 2024, and whether there are any investigations or leads regarding to his whereabouts. Steps that the relevant government agencies have taken to ensure that Mr. John Maina Wanjiro is traced and reunited with his family. The measures of protocols that the government has put in place to facilitate families in the tracing their relatives who have disappeared abroad, and prevention of similar incidences occurring in future. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Pareo. Chair, Defense, Intelligence, and Foreign Relations. Are you a member? Yes. Go ahead and tell us when you can bring the response.
Thank you, Chair. My chair was held up in another meeting.
Which chair are you addressing?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. My chairman, Honorable Koech, is held in another meeting. Sorry for the confusion. But considering how urgent this issue is, we'll raise it and maybe probably bring it on Thursday, if possible.
Okay.
Thursday afternoon.
Thursday afternoon, so be it. Mashua Waithaka. Honorable Mashua Waithaka, Kiambu Town.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I rise in request for a statement regarding the attempted land grabbing in Tinganga Ward in Kiambu constituency. Honorable Speaker, pursuant to Standing Order 44-2C, I wish to request for a statement from the chairperson of the Departmental Committee on Lands regarding the attempted land grabbing targeting the family of the late Wilson Bodu Gatito in Tinganga Ward, Kiambu County. Honorable Speaker, the Bodu family has owned and reside on their 236-acre parcel of land in Tinganga Ward in Kiambu, with their ownership property documented. The family acquired the land from white settlers 51 years ago, and are the legitimate owners. Ownership is further evidenced by compensation by the government for land allocated for the development of the Kiambu-Rioki-Gemwa Road, an additional compensation received for allocation of land for the Athi Water 3 pipeline easement. However, over the past 2 months, the family has faced systematic harassment through repeated summons from various state agencies, including the Directorate of Criminal Investigation and the National Land Commission, demanding explanations regarding their land acquisition. Honorable Speaker, the harassment has escalated to include unauthorized visits to the property of the family and acts of vandalism within their farm, which has disrupted their family activities. Despite full cooperation with all official summons and investigations, which have not yielded evidence of impropriety, they continue to face intimidation and live in constant fear for their safety and security of tenure. Honorable Speaker, it's against this background that I request for a statement from the chairperson of the Departmental Committee on Land addressing the following. 1. Reasons for the repeated summons issued to the Bodu family by various state agencies, including specific details of any formal investigations being conducted. 2. The actions being taken to investigate and address the reported incidents of vandalism and unauthorized access to the family's property. 3. The specific steps being taken by the ministry to protect the legitimate land rights of the Bodu family, given their documented history of ownership and previous official transactions with government agencies. And 4. The measures being implemented to protect legitimate landowners from harassment and intimidation by state officials and other interested parties in Kiambu and in the country. Honorable Speaker, I would like to add that Kenya is governed by rule of law. And up to today, Honorable Speaker.
Order, Honorable Mashua.
Yes.
Statement time. You read what you have written. When you finish, that's the end of the matter.
Thank you, Speaker.
You cannot debate your own statement.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Now, Chair Lands. Yes, Honorable Nyamoko.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. 14 days, 2 weeks.
You don't need, he says there's only an attempt to grab. There's no grabbing. Why do you need 14 days?
I think
you can arrest that attempt in 2 days, even less.
Then we can do it by Friday, this coming Friday.
Thursday. Friday we're not sitting. Thursday.
Right. Okay.
Get in touch with your people and stop the attempt.
Thank you.
Ariko Namoit, member for Turkana South. Ariko Namoit, member Turkana South. Question dropped. Response to statements. Tongoyo. Chair, Administration and Internal Security, to a statement requested by Honorable Malulu Injendi.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Malulu Gedi had sought a statement regarding the shooting of one Ms. Salome Makanda by a Kenya police officer. And he sought to know the circumstances that led to the shooting, and 2, the status of the investigation, and of course the status report on the measure the government has taken. Honorable Speaker, I want to state as follows. On 8th October, students from Bungoma National Polytechnic went on rampage. Police officers were consequently called to restore peace and secure the institution's infrastructure. However, the students resisted all the efforts to restore calmness, and in the ensuing melee, a student by the name Salome Ayaka Wakeza was fatally injured. Several police officers were also injured and were rushed to Bungoma West Hospital, where they were treated and discharged in fair condition. And a motor vehicle GKB 862Z Isuzu lorry windscreen was shattered and its left rear tire depleted. And Honorable Speaker, on the issue of investigation, the investigation are at advanced stage by the DCIO team and the IPOA, and the rival that was involved during the incident has been forwarded to DCIA for the further ballistic examination, and of course with the aim of even opening an inquiry file. Honorable Speaker, the State Department, on the third question, whether there is compensation, the State Department for Interior and National Administration has now voted to cater for the hospital bill. Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and I also wish to pass my condolences to the family of the deceased one. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to appreciate his response, but Mr. Speaker, some background information. This student was killed on 8th of October 2024 and was buried on 17th of the same October 2024. For the chair also to know, this student was shot at the back. The bullet went through the back of the head, came out through the nose. Now, Mr. Speaker, this response says Salome was fatally injured, and this student was killed on the spot. He's not talking about that. Mr. Speaker, he's also saying that the police are doing an investigation. Mr. Speaker, this happened in October. This investigation is until when? And what are they investigating? Because when you look at this report, it doesn't talk of the student having been shot. The Speaker, lastly, he is saying this is at the advanced stage. Could you just verify this information with whoever did the report? What does this advanced stage mean to the family, so that we can keep in line with what they are doing in helping this family or consoling this family in terms of her death? And then finally, Mr. Speaker, when does, because this has happened and it's now almost 2 months, when are they expecting to complete this so that the family can have a proper report? Because if the responsibility of killing is by the police, then I believe the National Police Service has a responsibility for compensation according to the Police Act. Thank you.
Tongoyo.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. First, I think the issue of being vitally injured is more or less the same thing. That, of course, death did happen. Honorable Speaker, by the time of the writing or the response, I think it was done about 2 or so weeks ago. You know, the statement was almost 3 weeks ago. So maybe, if need be, or redirect, so Honorable Speaker, I can able to get the updated report. But when I got this, I did also conduct the responsible directorate, and they were actually talking about, I think the file should be on, probably could have even been forwarded to ODPP, an inquiry file being opened.
Thank you. Next, again, Tongoyo, in response to a request by Professor Jaldeza Guyo.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Once again, the statement being sought by Honorable Jaldeza Guyo, Professor, regarding the reopening of the Hilo Gold Mine in Dabele, Moyale constituency, and in particular, he wanted to ask on the progress toward the reopening and the action taken by the ministry to facilitate the reopening of the mine, along with the implementation of the necessary administrative and security structures to safeguard the lives, property, and the welfare of the local community, and the effort to ensure cooperatives established by the locals are recognized and legitimate artisanal mines. Honorable Speaker, gold mining started in Dabel in the year 2023, around March 2024, the population of miners had increased to almost 40,000, resulting to the conflict, competition, health and environmental security risk. Despite the population increasing, there were no sanitary and toilet facilities. Further, the miners were using crude methods and outdated for that matter, resulting to the death due to the collapse of the mine shafts. Further, young men from the neighboring Somalia and locals within questionable characters flocked the mining site, consequently leading to the mines were closed. Following the meeting, which was convened by the Ministry of Interior, the mining, and the other stakeholders on the 2nd August, it was agreed that both ministries and the governing government of Marsabit work out on modalities to create a conducive environment for the reopening of the mines. On the action, Honorable Speaker, during the interministerial meeting, the Ministry of Interior and National Administration was tasked to, among others, ensure that the Inspector General of Police deploys 2 formed-up units, that is the RDU and GSU, to replace the local multi-agency team. And the 2 teams, I can confirm, Honorable Speaker, had been deployed and is being under the supervision of the IG. 2, the national government administrative officers were tasked to hold a stakeholders forum in order to ensure that the communities living around the mines comes into a consensus to avoid ethnic tension and conflicts. And so far, the elders representative from the different communities in Moyale has been meeting to iron out their differences, are in the process of analyzing their memorandum for presentation to the Ministry of Interior and the Ministry of Mining for further direction. Lastly, Honorable Speaker, the cooperatives are established through the relevant ministries, that is the Ministry of Mining and the Government of Moyale. So far, 15 cooperatives have been established, and the Ministry of Mining in liaison with the Department of Corporations and the county government will give the direction and the cooperatives other ministry guidelines in readiness for reopening and operationalization of the site. Honorable Speaker, that is the response, and I want also to state that we have been actually, this issue had actually given me an opportunity to interact more closely with the concerned Member of Parliament and actually even some local representative. So that is the response, Honorable Speaker.
Professor, you satisfied?
Not really. Mr. Speaker, it's true that the mining site was never closed officially, never closed in practice, but converted into some underworld dealings or trade with the security agencies, and hence denying the local community the chance to benefit from their natural resource. Mr. Speaker, the people of Moyale agreed to live together in harmony with the local dispute resolution mechanisms put in place. Mr. Speaker, Moyale is not in any way near Somalia. My request, we are not anywhere near Somalia. And on behalf of the people of Moyale and the Kenyans at large, I want that reopening to be formalized and the degazettement of the closure. Because it is based on security grounds that the place was closed and denying people the natural resources and allowing the security agencies to benefit with some other people. Let us degazette the closure and formalize the opening so that people can fetch for their whatever they can get. This is a gift from God after the very severe drought of 2022-2023. We managed to get gold in our place. And why should it be denied? Because of security reasons, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Tongoyo.
Honorable Speaker, it's true, but I appreciate, because I will give my vice, who was actually a local there. It's true, and I'd mentioned, Honorable Speaker, we had on one actual interaction with the professor. And it's true, the official position is the place is a disturbed area, is gazetted as so. and supposed to be closed. But the rumors is there is a lot of interest in there, and people are going illegally and doing their mining. And of course, it's good the members should be honest enough that some local leadership in the area are actually interfering with the process. And I'm sure you're appreciating that. And of course, Honorable Speaker, it is said this is one of the most richest gold mine in the country. It's a treasure. So, Honorable Speaker, I think the remaining part, and the reason I want to emphasize here is, I think it's not safe to open it until the facilities are provided and the risk is minimized so that we avoid unnecessary death of the locals. But having said this, Honorable Speaker, I will kindly ask if I can able to, my vice is here, is a member of that community, he can elaborate it further if they...
Dr. Tongo, you have no authority to invite a member to speak. Yes, Russell.
Thank you very much.
Are you seeking clarification or you are giving more information?
Mr. Speaker, I am an interested party in this, coming from the area.
Go ahead.
Honorable Speaker, I thank you for the moment. And we have heard what my chairman has responded in form of a statement by the ministry. Mr. Speaker, to actually say the truth, this is travesty of justice, because indeed the government closed down the Hilo gold mine, but mining still continues, actually day and night. And the other forces that have taken over, and the locals are denied to do it's called the artisanal mining, where they go and make a living from mining with their bare hands. So for that reason, Honorable Speaker, my request is you need to guide us on this, that we are people's representatives. And the Honorable Member for Moyale is not being consulted in this, although he has done the necessary groundwork in terms of organizing the community, forming cooperatives and circles. For that reason, to help our people in Moyale, the Committee of Internal Security and also the Committee of Mine to constitute small teams to visit the area so that we are able to respond comprehensively to the House, whether it is failure on the part of the government, the security, or people are just denied their right for no apparent reason in the name of security. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable, yes, Professor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The truth of the matter is that there are lots of interested parties that facilitated the closure and the continued closure and denying the people. I'll be glad if the Departmental Committee on Mining and Internal Security visits the site for themselves. But the fact of the matter is that we are denied our chance, and all we are pleading with is the gazettement of the insecurity status. Because the issue of toilets or pit latrine is actually a business that people have adopted. That the people who are there are actually, people who have dug pit latrines and hired to the people who want to use them. So it's not an excuse. But if the county government was asked to do it and they don't do it, then let's not deny our people the opportunity to benefit from this.
Thank you. Tongoyo, I would advise you, Tongoyo, to meet with the member whom you said you have been meeting, and your vice chair, and any other interested party from the area, because I think the problem are administrative issues that you can be able to sort out. So arrange, you have this afternoon, you have tomorrow, to meet with the members concerned. Thank you. Honorable Adewario, North Horr. Honorable Adewario of North Horr. Where is the Chair Agriculture? Chair Agriculture? Vice Chair, Majority Leader, where is your chairman?
Mutunga. No.
Honorable Speaker, the chair and the vice chair are in a coffee engagement at Serena Hotel, and I thought they would have been here by now. Probably we'll ask the chair maybe to excuse himself from that meeting. And
at least Dr. Mutunga is a consistent attendant.
Very consistent.
Yes.
Conference.
Honorable Wario, the chair can't chide, the speaker can't chide the chair. He's always here and is normally very responsive to parliamentary business. So I'll direct that your matter be stayed to Wednesday morning when it can be responded to. Is that all right with you?
Well guided, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Wario. Chairperson, Select Committee, NGCDF. Musa Sirma.
Mr. Speaker, last week, member rose on the floor of the House to ask the chair of NGCDF on the status of receipt of funds and disbursement as at 2nd December 2024. Honorable Speaker, the National Government Constituency Development Fund is established under Section 4 of the NGCDF Act 2015 as amended in 2023 with an objective of addressing poverty and regional development imbalances by dedicating a minimum of 2.5% of the national government share of annual revenue divided by the Annual Division of Revenue Act enacted pursuant to Article 218 of the Constitution. The funds are geared towards community-driven development projects and in every constituency identified and implemented at grassroots level. The fund is managed by the NGCDF Board, which is a body corporate established pursuant to Section 14, 15, and 16 of the Act. At the constituency level, the day-to-day management of the fund is vested in the National Government Constituency Development Fund Committee that are in place in each of the 290 constituencies. In 2023, 2024, and 2024-2025 financial year, the National Government Constituency Development Fund was allocated a total of 68,232,900,000 in financial year 2024-25, out of which 54,777,777 million was allocated pursuant to Section 4 of GCDF Act to fund projects, proposals identified at the constituency level, while 13,455,900,000 were rolled over funds from financial year 2023-2024. In financial year 2023-2024, 53,531,500,000 in financial year 2023-2024 to the fund pursuant to Section 4 of the GCDF Act to fund project proposals identified at the constituency level. A further appropriation of 3.4 billion was made under 2023-2024 financial year supplementary estimate. Number 1, as a conditional grant to NGCDF for construction of classrooms and integrated learning resource centers in junior secondary schools. In addition, still under 2023-2024 financial year supplementary estimate 1, a further 1 billion was allocated to NGCDF as a conditional grant to infrastructure development for schools in Nairobi City County. Therefore, brings the total allocation to NGCDF in 2023-2024 financial year to 57 931,500,000. Mr. Speaker, out of 68 billion allocated in financial year 2024-25, the board has received a total of 13 billion 531 million shillings. On the 25th of September, which is this financial year, we received 5.5 billion. On 30th of September, we received 2.3 billion. And on 15th of November, which was the final tranche of 2023-2024 allocation, we received 5.731 billion, which now is being disbursed. In 2023-2024 financial year, the board received 44 billion 400 million from the National Treasury. The funds were received in various tranches as stipulated below. 8th of January 2024, 6 billion. 10th of January 2024, 4 billion. 21st of February, 10 billion. 3rd of April 2024, 10 billion. 29th of April 2024, 10 billion. 1st of July 2024, 4.4 billion, giving a total of 44 billion 400 million shillings. So the disbursement of funds for allocation for financial year 2023-24 to the constituencies and the board secretariat. The board disbursed the funds received to the constituencies and the board as follows. In 90 constituencies, they have full amount amounting to 16 billion 840 million 869 971. 148 constituencies have received between 90% and 99% of the funds allocated, amounting to 27 billion 16 million 806 270, leaving a balance of 1 billion 136 088.537. Mr. Speaker, 39 constituencies have received between 80% and 89% of the funds allocated, amounting to 6 billion 591 802 and 803, leaving a balance of 99 million 340,000 215. 13 constituencies, Mr. Speaker, have received between 65% and 79% of the funds allocated, amounting to 1 billion 993 million 158 791, leaving a balance of 661 million 224 246. In addition, the board has been disbursing funds to constituencies which had pending balances.
Order, members at the back. Take your seats or retreat to the corridor and discuss your issues there. Go on.
In addition, the board has been disbursing funds to constituencies which had pending balances with respect to funds allocated between 2019-2020, 2020 and 2022-2023 financial years. However, a total of 434 million 077 337 and 20 cents is yet to be disbursed due to the outstanding issues amount as summarized below. That is, in 2022-23 financial year, 36 constituencies at 279 million 806,859, which is pending, which is still with the board. 221 2022 10 constituencies have 99 million 563 445. In 2020 to 2021, 11 constituencies with 51 million 666 380. On 2019-2020, 2 constituencies have a total of 3,040,650. So the total amount which is still pending is 434,077,334.20. Mr. Speaker, I have annexed the various constituencies, individual constituencies, on my table, and the factors which are affecting disbursements of funds to constituencies are: 1, slow pace of receipt of funds from Treasury, which we do receive, and yet we have not received, and therefore it takes time. And then delay by some constituencies in clearing identified issues to facilitate approval of the outstanding projects. Mr. Speaker, I beg to table the list so that the members can be able to have time and look at their constituencies where they are, and possibly make or expedite on your constituencies by asking their fund managers and their chairs or the CDFCs to be able to expedite on issues which have been raised on projects. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
You've left out something, Musa Sirma. It was alleged here by some members that members of your committee prioritize yourselves to get early disbursements at the expense of other members. That order, Koyo, that allegation is on the Hansard, and it will be good for you to also speak to it.
Mr. Speaker,
how many members are you in that committee?
We are 18.
18.
Mr. Speaker, my constituency is amongst the one which is between 90 and 99. And in fact, my constituency, we have 90% disbursement. And I'm the chair. I cannot force the board to approve projects which are not being cleared or clearly understood by the board, or there are some issues to be raised. And especially issues dealing with land has always been taking a long time, because you must produce the title deed before paying the owner. That is where the problem is. And owners at times, they refuse to transfer the land, and yet we have been able to do that. There are also problems with engineers who would not have finished giving their technical expertise to be able to be approved. So those are the issues. But to say that we, as the committee, we are taken equally, and I have never asked them to prioritize my project. It is only when they are eligible to be approved. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Injendi Malulu.
Mr. Speaker, besides what is responding to, also when it comes to corporate social responsibility, most of the committee members are the people, the persons, the honorable members who normally get those, not other members like ourselves. I've been here from 2013. I've never had any of those. Corporate social responsibility.
Yes, Gisairo.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I stand as a member of the committee. And Honorable Speaker, it's quite unfortunate that other members feel that we have undue advantage by the virtue of being in that committee. Honorable Speaker, as at today, Kitutu Masaba is owed significant amount of money by the board, and because of very valid reasons, which when I follow, I'm always explained to that item X, Y, Z has not been approved because of gaps. Honorable Speaker, every week, a number of members in this House have approached me when they have issues, and I've worked with them to the board to try, for some members who do not even know where the CDF office is. So we try to assist. And the issue of saying that we get CSR, in my constituency, a CSR project that was started in the last term, I have even been following for it to be completed. It's yet to be complete. In the last term, I was not a member of parliament in the last term. Honorable Wanjala, it's proper to listen before we comment. So, Honorable Speaker, it will be unfair to judge and put the members of the committee in a corner in which actually they are also facing the same problems as the members here. Our work is to try and push for all members to get fair distribution of the funds so that constituents can benefit from the resources. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Yes, Milemba. Honorable Mboko Milemba.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I want to commend the CDF committee, despite the fact that it's being labeled on them that there has been some favoritism, but I think they have done far much better, and they need a congratulation. And also the chairman has been very accurate in bringing reports. Remember, Honorable Speaker, the report he has just given us is quite detailed and up to going on to annex how every constituency is performing. But indeed, we have not received all our monies, and therefore, Chairman, please push that we get these monies. I hear they are at the board, so that we complete. But, Honorable Speaker, back to the question that was on the floor on the fairness, the CDF committee is far much fairer than other committees in this House. And in fact, before you crucify the CDF committee, there are committees in this House which need to be dealt with. And it only takes a honest position to speak on this. When you look at a committee, I was at the budget office, and I looked at the number of roads and the number of money that had been given to Muhaya. And you can just sympathize with me, Honorable Speaker. It's less than even 30,000. Yet another constituency can get up to 500 million Kenya shillings for roads. And these guys are in this House, and they were supposed to actually be in those offices to take care of all the members of parliament, because we cannot be in all the committees, all of us. Another example, Honorable Speaker, and I can see a few of them looking down now. You know, my slogan is "Look in my eyes." The Energy Committee, that is a shame. And it requires boldness to speak on this. How would it happen that even when I used to sit there, Honorable Speaker, when I was in NASA, and sometimes people do imagine that when you're on government side, you're even favored. I'm telling Honorable Speaker, I did not get any power project. Yet one constituency is having projects worth 400, 500 million shillings. So even as we go down and close, we should also take care of the budget committee, because we don't know what they are doing. This House is for everybody, and this money is for all Kenyans. And therefore, Honorable Speaker, even as we talk about the CDF committee, those three I've mentioned plus others, and more so emphasizing energy and roads and that budget committee, must really be looked into so that there's fairness. It can never happen that we sit in the same house. Somebody gets 20 million, another one gets 800 million. What the hell are we doing, Honorable Speaker? I'm sorry to use bad language. I withdraw the word hell.
Yes.
It's not correct,
Thank you.
and I want to put it on record.
Thank you. Kwame. Honorable Kwame.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I just want to emphasize as well the need for timely action. I know we are in 2024-5 financial year, and we are almost going through first half of the year. And yet NGCDF money has never come to us. Meaning, if it comes in December or early next year, we are going to have a very squeezed time to do all these things. That's my point number one. And my second point is more or less what I think Mheshimiwa Oboko has said. Honestly, all constituencies are the same in law. All MPs are the same. We need fair treatment so that we get equal opportunities that come with the fund allocation and giving funds to the MPs. This one I urge, I'm not blaming anybody, but I ask our chairman of various committees to ensure that we get our fair share and also timely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr.
Wanjala. Wanjala.
Mr. Speaker, sorry, I have called. I want to agree with the Honorable Omboko Milemba that there is unfairness with the other, the Budget Committee, the Roads Committee, the Energy Committee. Mr. Speaker, we have only 290 constituencies in the country. Why don't we agree as a house that when it reaches time for budgeting, and we have 290 constituencies, and we have 600-700 billion for roads, why can't each constituency first of all be given 1 billion each, so that they can start doing roads slowly by slowly, instead of one constituency there are two constituencies. One is in Kiambu, and another one is in Muranga, where they have taken all the billions. Mr. Speaker, if you look at that budget, there is a lot to be decided, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, guide this House that we look at every capture. If it's electricity, why don't every constituency get equal number? Then the balance, the leadership can use to do whatever they want to do. When it reaches to roads, then we say a billion, that will only be 290. Then the rest, the leadership can decide where to take. Like that in every sector, Mr. Speaker. Then these people who are now screwing us, we are in the parliament, and it is as if we are not in the parliament because we don't belong to budget committees.
Is that Chonga? Chonga.
Thank you, Speaker. The matter that is being discussed is more serious than the way it is looking.
It is CDF.
Yes. The matter of CDF is more serious than the way it is being. A number of employees, a number of members of parliament here have been facing backlash because people out there are seeing what is going on in some constituencies, which in some constituencies are not happening. For instance, look at issues dealing with education. We are having some constituencies which are able to disburse the bursary to nearly all the students in their constituencies. While on the other side, we are facing this issue. Talking alone is not enough. Talking about that this committee is doing this or they're allocating this much for themselves is not enough. Time has come when fairness should be seen, with proper mechanism have been put in place so that we can all be seen equally performing at the same age. What has been said by Honorable Omboko Milemba is true. I sit in the Committee of Energy, and I have a very, very sad story to tell about that. It is shameful if I put it here. It is shameful. But we are not happy at all with where it's going. For one member to be given over 800 million, and the other members are getting 20 million from the same budget cannot be fair at all. It can't. And we will not...
Thank you.
Yeah.
Tandaza.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm standing here as the Vice Chairman of the committee.
This is your Speaker. This is not your Chairman.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm standing here as the Vice Chairman of the committee. One.
Which committee?
The NGCDF committee. My Chairman is here.
Okay.
One, would want it to put it that we do not have CSR under the NGCDF committee or under the board. What we have is what we call best practices. And this is very necessary because you realize that while we are distributed geographically with different terrain, sometimes we have projects which are so much below standards. One sometimes opts to put a classroom without even doors and windows, which is not appropriate. So the board, through the committee, then sees fit to do some best practices where other members can actually just pull a drawing and do their project as per those specifications. The other issue, Honorable Speaker, is that for sure, even me as the Vice Chairman, I'm still having some monies with the board on matters reallocation. I think it also happens in most cases with members that they would want to reallocate for one reason or another. For my case, the Minister of Education decided to put classrooms somewhere where I had already allocated. So there was no need to again continue putting those classrooms. But reallocations, of course, come with their own challenges, and those are some of the reasons. Otherwise, it should be clear, as the chairman has stated, all the monies are with the board. Everybody should be having all the monies if the requirements have been met as per the regulations that this House set. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Enough for statements. Next order. Order number 10. Order number 10.
Order number 10, motion. Consideration of an agreement on the establishment of the Global Green Growth Institute, GGGI.
Chair, Departmental Committee on Environment, Ngogoyo, you are a member of the committee?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. On behalf of the committee, I beg to move that this House adopts the report of the Departmental Committee on Environment, Forestry and Mining on its consideration of the agreement on the establishment of the Global Green Growth Institute laid on the table of the House on Wednesday, 20th November 2024, and pursuant to the provision of Section 8.4 of the Treaty, Making and Ratification Act 2012, approves the ratification of the agreement on the establishment of the Global Green Growth Institute. Mr. Speaker, while moving this motion, I wish to bring to the attention of this House that the GGI, the Global Green Institute, was established in the year 2012 at the Rio Plus 20 United Nations Conference on Sustainable Development. The agreement on the Global Growth Institute was subject to ratification of the GGI, entered into force on the 18th of October 2012, following the signing of the agreement by 16 countries and accession by 5 countries. The Global Green Growth Institute is a treaty base of intergovernmental organization that supports and promotes sustainable economic growth in developing countries and emerging economies. It provides green growth services to governments and promotes action by supporting access to climate finance through building nation finance vehicles, and helps address policy gaps and challenges, like what you have seen this country do on tree growing. GGI currently has 48 member states, which include 9 from Africa, Angola, Ethiopia, Rwanda, Uganda, Senegal, Zambia, and the headquarters of the GGI is located in Seoul, Korea. On the 13th December 2023, last year, the Cabinet of Kenya approved a cabinet memo on the accession of the Global Green Growth Institute, and pursuant to Section 7 of the Treaty Making and Ratification Act of 2012. Upon accession of the Global Green Growth Institute, Kenya shall be required to A, attend and participate in the biennial meeting of the Assembly under Article 7.2, 2, invest in public participation and awareness of the programs on the green growth sustainability development. Mr. Speaker, accord the GGI privileges and immunities as may be necessary and appropriate for proper functioning under Article 15, guide and cooperate partnership and linkage with other international bodies under Article 16, carry out all functions of the Assembly, including electing members to the Council, appointing the Director General, considering and adopting amendments to the agreement, and receiving reports from the Secretariat. Mr. Speaker, the committee undertook public participation upon placement of the adverts on the print media on the 23rd of July 2024, requesting for comments and submission of memorandum from the members of the public and other relevant stakeholders pursuant to Article 118, 1 and B of the Constitution and Standing Orders. The committee received memorandums and oral submission from the following institutions. 1, Ministry of Environment, Climate and Forestry Mining. 2, Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Diaspora. 3, the National Treasury and Economic Planning. And 4, the Office of the Attorney General. We observed the following. Having considered the agreements, the committee made the following observation. A, membership of the GGI will enable Kenya access finance and technical support to mainstream green growth and climate change actions in the national planning. 2, the memorandum to the GGI will enable Kenya benefit from sharing and gaining knowledge through multi-country cooperation. The Global Green Growth Institute presents an opportunity for Kenya to explore and tap into the benefits of the green growth economy, which includes accelerating green financing and creating green jobs. Kenya is a beneficiary of the Green Climate Fund, with a number of readiness and projects finance opportunities, access which has been enabled and the country to carry its development objectives with a climate lens, and GGI as a delivery partner is a great opportunity for Kenya to leverage for more project financing by the Global Climate Fund. The ratification of Kenya to the agreement establishes the GGI Institute and provides an opportunity for Kenya to participate fully in the Global Green Growth Institute activities, including voting rights in the GGI Assembly and Council. Mr. Speaker, the Global Green Institute will help us get funds from the Global Climate Fund. Now we will have a structure that is more organized, and the ratification of this agreement by this National Assembly will now make us full members of the Global Green Institute. Mr. Speaker, sir, Madam Speaker, the committee has considered, having considered the agreement, recommends that the House approves the ratification of the agreement on the establishment of the Global Green Institute. Madam Speaker, finally, the committee is thankful to the Office of the Clerk and the National Assembly for the logistical and technical support accorded to it during its sitting, the Ministry for their participation and the submission during the consideration of the convention. Mr. Speaker, I therefore request the Honorable Majority Leader Kimani Ichung'wah to second this motion.
Proceed.
Mike. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I rise to support this motion on the Global Green Growth Institute. Honorable Speaker, just for information to the House, in addition to what the chair designate of the Environment Committee, the Honorable Ngogoyo, member for Kajiado North, has said, that Kenya indeed did assent, or rather it's our letter of intent to join as a member of the agreement was done on the 23rd of November 2022 by the Cabinet Secretary then for Foreign and Diaspora Affairs in a letter that was addressed to the Director General of the Global Green Growth Institute. And the Office of the Director General communicated its approval of Kenya's willingness to join the GGGI on the 11th of January 2023. And in the same communication, Honorable Speaker, GGGI requested Kenya for a grant of the Privileges Immunity Agreement. And this immunity agreement, Honorable Speaker, a host country agreement, negotiation on the GGI agreement on the legal status, and the immunity was held in July of 2023 with Kenya's negotiation team and GGGI representatives. As part of the accession process, a cabinet memorandum was submitted to the cabinet for approval for accession on May 2023, in line with Section 7 of the Treaty Making and Ratification Act, revised version of 2012. And further, the cabinet approved accession for the GGGI during its meeting held on 13th of December 2023. Further, on the 13th of May 2024, the Prime Cabinet Secretary and Cabinet Secretary for Foreign and Diaspora Affairs submitted a parliamentary memorandum alongside a copy of the agreement to the National Assembly, and it is this memorandum and agreement that the committee has been considering and recommends its approval thereof, Honorable Speaker, by the House. It's important, Honorable Speaker, to mention that the main objective of the GGGI is to promote sustainable development of developing and emerging countries, including the least developed countries, by supporting and diffusing a new paradigm of economic growth, targeting key aspects of economic growth and economic performance, resilience, poverty reduction, job creation, and social inclusion, and creating and improving economic, environmental, and social conditions of developing and emerging countries through partnerships between developed and developing countries and the public and private sectors. Honorable Speaker, our country is not at a better place since we are now in the debate of public-private partnerships. We are also in the debate of being able to leverage on low-carbon green economies and carbon credit financing in the financing of development initiatives, and of course working in line with the developing countries, and that clear collaboration between the developed countries, or the global south and the global north, Honorable Speaker, as they have been christened. Honorable Speaker, additionally, the GGGI plays the role of an enabler and facilitator of member transition into a low-carbon green economy. And as I said, Honorable Speaker, our country has been very well in that, knowing that almost a very huge percentage, Honorable Speaker, of our energy is now green energy. And many countries are actually to benefit and to emulate Kenya, or especially on energy production from green sources. And therefore, as we transition into a low-carbon green economy, we will benefit from the knowledge, skills, and technology from other countries in the developing and developed countries. Also, Honorable Speaker, it seeks to provide policy advice and technical support in the development of green growth plans, policies and regulations, mobilization of green investments, implementation of green growth projects, and development of local capacities and knowledge sharing. Honorable Speaker, I said we stand an opportunity to be able to share knowledge between our country, other developing countries, and also the developed world, because we are far ahead of many developed countries in terms of green energy with the geothermal wind and wind energy that we are producing in the country. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, this treaty comes at a very good time, and this agreement, the signing and assent and approval thereof by this House, will be a very good thing, not just for this country, but for the world and the globe, in terms of reducing carbon emissions, having green economies around the world, leveraging on green financing for projects, and also encouraging the growth of projects in our country and in our region and in Africa at large that are green in nature, or rather green investments. With those many remarks, Honorable Speaker, I beg to second.
Honorable members, I now propose the question that this House adopts the report of the Departmental Committee on Environment and Forestry and Mining on its consideration of the agreement on the establishment of a Global Green Growth Institute, laid on the table of this House on Wednesday, 20th November 2024, and pursuant to the provisions of Section 8(4) of the Treaty Making and Ratification Act 2012, approves the ratification of the agreement of the establishment of a Global Green Growth Institute. The mood of the House that we put the question. Honorable members, I now put the question that this House adopts the report of the Departmental Committee on Environment and Forestry and Mining on its consideration of the agreement on the establishment of the Global Green Growth Institute laid on the table of this House on Wednesday, 20th November 2024, and pursuant to the provisions of Section 8.4 of the Treaty Making and Ratification Act 2012, approves the ratification of the agreement on the establishment of a Global Green Growth Institute. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Will as many as of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
Order number 11, the Public Audit Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 4 of 2024, second reading.
Majority Leader.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to move that the Public Audit Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 4 of 2024, be now read a second time. Honorable Speaker, this Public Audit Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 4, is seeking to amend the Public Audit Act, Honorable Speaker, on the basis of a court ruling in the court that was filed by Transparency International versus the Attorney General and two others of 2018, petition number 388 of 2016, that sought to nullify certain sections of the Act, of the Public Audit Act, Cap 412B, on the basis that they were unconstitutional. And Honorable Speaker, in line with that, we published this bill that seeks now to rectify what the court found to be unconstitutional. And I must take this opportunity, Honorable Speaker, to thank in absentia the Chair of the Finance and National Planning Committee and all members of the Finance and National Planning Committee for having considered the amendment bill and the report that they tabled to the House, agreeing with many of the provisions. Honorable Speaker, just to mention some of the things that were found to be unconstitutional revolved around Section 4.2, Section 8, 12, 17.1, 18, 27, 40, 42, and 70. And Honorable Speaker, Justice Mwita held that all these sections of the Public Audit Act, not Public Order, Public Audit Act, Cap 412B, were inconsistent with and in contravention of the Constitution and were therefore invalid. The Honorable Speaker, Clause 2 of this bill therefore contains amendments to definitions in alignment with the new proposals. Some of these definitions are accounting officer, the Auditor General, effectiveness, lawful, public entity, audit, disallowable expenditure, economy, efficiency, grant, irregular expenditure, office of the Auditor General, public money, public resources, unauthorized expenditure. And these definitions, Honorable Speaker, have a bearing on the issues that were touched on by the courts that were considered to have been unconstitutional. And if you look at Clause 3 of the bill, Honorable Speaker, the office of the Auditor General is now being defined as one that shall be, or rather the Auditor General shall be the accounting officer and staff appointed by the Auditor General. And it is worth noting that Section 4.2 of the Public Audit Act was declared unconstitutional because it provided that the office of the Auditor General was to comprise of the Auditor General as a statutory head and the other staff appointed by the Auditor General as may be delegated in Articles 234 of the Constitution, and this is what the court or Justice Mwita did find to have been unconstitutional. And largely, Honorable Speaker, because the High Court, in declaring this provision unconstitutional, reasoned that Section 4.2 of the Act resulted in an unconstitutional effect of reducing the constitutional office of the Auditor General into a statutory office. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, the amendments that we are seeking to do now under this Clause 2 and 3 are to ensure that the constitutionality of the office of the Auditor General is not reduced to one of a statutory office. And the Auditor General's office remains a constitutional office, and the Auditor General will continue acting as a constitutional office largely to safeguard the independence and autonomy of that office, the office holder and the office of the Auditor General. Honorable Speaker, if you look at clause 4, it amends section 5 again of the Act on qualification of for appointment of the Auditor General to include an additional qualification requirement for the Auditor General being a practicing member of good standing of a professional body of accountants recognized under the Accountants Act. This is important, Honorable Speaker, because we need to hold people who hold office in the office of the Auditor General accountable to a professional body, and therefore seeking to ensure that whoever is appointed to this office, part of the qualifications that you need to is to be a practicing member of good standing of a professional body like ISPAC, which I was honored to address about 2 weeks ago in Mombasa in their annual conference. Honorable Speaker, I'll tell you, being an accountant myself, accountants of good standing are good people and very good people, because we deal with facts and only facts and figures as they are. If there's a problem, we will tell you there's a problem as it is, Honorable Speaker. We do not sugarcoat, and I am not saying that, Honorable Speaker, because I know you are a very senior lawyer in this country. But you know, unlike lawyers, lawyers will twist things according to what their clients want, and they will even twist facts and figures. For accountants, they deal with facts and figures as they are. And I see the Honorable TJ Kajwang smiling broadly, because he knows when he's acting for his clients, they will say what suits the case for their client. But for accountants, Honorable Speaker, especially accountants who are of good standing, and that's why we have put this provision that you must be an accountant of good standing in a professional body that is recognized by the Accountants Act. And we did make amendments to the Accountants Act in this. I don't know, I think it's the other parliament.
Majority
in the
Leader, maybe
parliament.
I can just help you here as a lawyer of good standing. With the accountants, 1 + 1 is 2. But for lawyers, 1 + 1 can be 1 or 2 or 3. So there's 3 options, but there's a definite answer. So I think, Honorable TJ, you cannot let him take a swipe at us.
Honorable Speaker, I never meant to say that lawyers are not truthful. But as you have said, Honorable Speaker, and Honorable TJ agrees with you, for a lawyer, 1 + 1 can be anything. But for an accountant, 1 + 1 must be 2, and it cannot be anything else. And to safeguard public interest and public resources, we cannot have professions where 1 + 1 does not add up to 2. The people who we must entrust with ensuring that public resources, if you add public resources to a certain state department, they must add up. And what is abstract, the eventual answer must add up without meandering and without excuses as to why the result is not what it ought to be. And I say that with tremendous respect, Honorable Speaker, to your profession. But in this, my profession of accountants, that is the way it is, and that's why you find many of us are unable to tell lies. Many of us are unable to say things that are not factual, truthful, and accurate. We remain faithful to numbers, figures as they are, and facts as they are. Moving on, Honorable Speaker, if you look at clause 5 of the bill, it amends section 7 of the Act on the function and powers of the Auditor General to provide for an additional function for the Auditor General, which is to satisfy himself or herself that public resources have been applied or used in an economical way, in a manner that is efficient, or rather economic meaning they give value for money, that public resources are also being applied efficiently, effectively, in a transparent and sustainable manner. Because, Honorable Speaker, there has been a gap in our laws that the Auditor General, the Office of the Auditor General, looks at how money is applied, but at times they don't look at the effectiveness of how the public resources were utilized and how transparent and sustainable those resources have been applied, whether they have been applied in an efficient way, in a way that is economical to the country, and one that gives value to the people of Kenya. Honorable Speaker, I don't want to go clause by clause of the bill, but largely just to mention that all the provisions in this bill, Honorable Speaker, are aligning now to all the issues that the court through Justice Mwita did find to be unconstitutional, including clarifying the role of the Audit Advisory Committee Board in the development of the organizational structure of the Office of the Auditor General. And this is under Clause 9, and the provision cures the problem in the provision that provided that organizational structure was to be considered and approved by the Audit Advisory Board. And that now has been clarified, and the role of this Audit Advisory Board is now clear under Clause 9. Honorable Speaker, Clause 10 and 11 of the bill seeks to amend sections 15 and 16 to provide for the recruitment of a Deputy Auditor General in place of a Senior Deputy Auditor General, because today the current office has the Auditor General, then the substantive deputy, the Senior Deputy Auditor General, and now we want a process, we are amending to create for the recruitment of a Deputy Auditor General. And it now states that the correct position that the recruitment shall be by the Auditor General and not the Advisory Board. I think before it has said that will be done by the Advisory Board, and then the appointment by the Auditor General. It further aligns the responsibilities with the Constitution, so that, again, to cure the problems that the good judge didn't find to be unconstitutional. Honorable Speaker, this was a very detailed bill, and by and large, because it is aligning to what was found to have been unconstitutional by the courts, then, Honorable Speaker, we have nothing much really to debate on, because what the courts did find unconstitutional, we legislate and we leave it to the courts to interpret and translate what we have legislated into law as to whether they align to the Constitution. And if the courts do find that particular sections or an entire law does not conform to the Constitution, then they may declare, as they did to the various sections that were declared unconstitutional. And ours, the onus now remains on the House to correct what was found to be unconstitutional and align it with the Constitution. And by and large, all the amendments now in this bill seek to align to the issues or the clauses that I mentioned from 42 all the way to 70, as I listed them, that were found to be unconstitutional, and make them now constitutional. And I do hope that members will support. And as I indicated, the Finance and National Planning Committee did consider all these provisions and tabled a report before the House, which by and large agrees with what the court found. And we have no choice than to agree with them also. And therefore beg to move, Honorable Speaker, and urge the House to support, because the Office of the Auditor General and that of the Comptroller of Budgets are two very critical offices under the architecture of the 2010 Constitution, because these are the two offices that ensure that, as we are seeking even to further amend in the role and function of the Office of the Auditor General, that ensure that public resources are utilized not just in an accountable and transparent manner, that as we are now even further enriching to ensure there is not only transparency, public resources are applied in an accountable way, in an efficient way, in a manner that we can find value for money in how we apply public resources. And more importantly, Honorable Speaker, that these public resources applied are then done pursuant to set policies that effectively improve the lot of the Kenyan people. Honorable Speaker, if we fail to do that, and if we fail to empower the Office of the Auditor General, man is bound by temptations, Honorable Speaker, and those who are charged with the responsibility of applying public resources will get tempted. But there must be something at the end of the day that tells you, however much you are tempted, if you touch public resources, there is somebody watching and superintending over those resources, and they will do it in a way to ensure that you did not only apply resources effectively and efficiently, but in a sustainable manner to ensure that the development of a country is safeguarded, and more importantly, to ensure that there is also value for money in the application of public resources. Because when there is no value for money, then, Honorable Speaker, we end up applying so much of our public resources in projects that at the end of the day don't give value to the Kenyan people and the Kenyan taxpayer. Honorable Speaker, we have been told Kenyans absolutely have no problem with paying taxes. What they want after they pay their taxes is to ensure that there is value for money and they get value for every coin and cent that they pay in form of taxes. Kenyans want to see that if a road is being done, the resources are applied to construct that road, Honorable Speaker, and I had the debate from my office that was here earlier on the application and deployment of resources for roads development in the country. That roads are not done and 1 year down the line because money was not applied, public resources were not applied in an efficient, accountable, transparent, effective, and in a manner that ensured there was value for money. Then a year down the line, a road that was done to bitumen standards is dilapidated and even worse than it was when it was a Maram road, Honorable Speaker. And we have seen it across the board, Honorable Speaker. And that is why we must ensure that the Office of the Auditor General also scrutinizes how resources, public resources, are applied by state officers who are charged with that responsibility. Members of Parliament, all these members of Parliament, bear the brunt of the public when roads are impassable. I witnessed, Honorable Speaker, the other day an MCA, I think in Mlolongo, in Mavoko, being forced by members of the public, his own constituents, to walk through ponds of water because they feel it is the MCA who is failing them. But they forget the MCA, as a member of the county assembly, has no resources to apply in the implementation of government projects. If anything, the person they should have made to walk through that pond of water is either their governor or the county executive member in charge of roads. Tomorrow, Honorable Speaker, these members of Parliament will be made to walk through ponds of water again by their constituents who fail to understand that it is the same public who have told us, even under NGCDF or even under the roads board money for the fuel levy, move out of implementation. The courts have agreed with everybody that members of Parliament, their key responsibilities revolve around legislating what we are doing now with the Office of the Auditor General. 2, oversight. 3, representation. And I have seen members even this afternoon representing their people saying that there are certain roads, billions, hundreds of billions have been allocated to a few counties and not other counties and constituencies, Honorable Speaker. And I see the member for Alda is saying Kiambu. Kiambu, I can tell her, the billions you will see in Kiambu are trunk roads. The highway running from Westlands, from ABC, all the way to Rironi. You will find in the budget process, you will find a figure of about 7 billion shillings, and you'd imagine roads in Kiambu are all done. They are not. That road runs from Westlands constituency through Dagoretti North, through Dagoretti South, through Kabete, Kikuyu, Limuru, and terminates just before you get to Naivasha. And Honorable Speaker, I was saying that because we have been told and accused, and with tremendous respect to the former Prime Minister, I've also seen him add his voice to that, that members of Parliament must never be involved in the implementation of projects. And so it is for members of the county assemblies. But why do the public in Mlolongo or Mavoko feel that the member of the county assembly is the one who should be fixing their road? Why is it today that members of the public in Kikuyu constituency feel that I should be fixing roads more than their governor, who has been given resources to fix their village roads? But they will keep coming to the members of Parliament, because members of Parliament are not just efficient and effective in the application of public resources that have been, they superintend in NGCDF by oversighting to ensure that there is proper implementation of projects through NGCDF. And so it is through CRC. If you go to all the 290 constituencies, and I've been around this country as we tangatangad, Honorable Speaker, and I still continue to tangatanga across the country, I can tell you, every other constituency you visit in this country, If you find a road being maintained, whether it is a Maram road or a bitumen standard road that is being sealed potholes, it will not be accounted by a county government. It will be through the constituency roads committees, or through KERA, or through KURA, or through KENHA. Honorable Speaker, I'm saying this because, as I said, I will not be shocked if tomorrow a member of parliament is made to walk through mud by his or her constituents, which is very unfair, Honorable Speaker, because these MPs have no money to fix roads. But the people who are charged with fixing roads, those at KERA, those at KURA, those at KENHA, then implement these projects in a manner that is not cost efficient, that is not effective, that is not transparent. That is why they bid rigging in almost all these road agencies. Honorable Speaker, the only person we can ensure is able to catch these thieves is the Office of the Auditor General. It is only the Auditor General then, empowered by this bill when it becomes an act of parliament, who will be able to ensure that public officers apply public resources in a transparent and accountable manner, in a manner that is efficient and effective in the delivery of services, and in a manner that gives value to the people for every coin of their taxes, Honorable Speaker, so that Kenyans can pay taxes happily. I don't know whether there is such a thing as paying taxes happily, Honorable Speaker, because I read even in the Bible, Jesus Christ himself had to tell the people that give unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and give to the Lord what belongs to the Lord. That tells you that even in those ancient times, at the time of Jesus Christ, people are not happy to pay to Caesar, they are not happy to pay taxes. But today we are saying, let us pay taxes, but ensure that we get value for our taxes, Honorable Speaker. Because if we don't get value from our money, then we'll find no reason to pay. And therefore, Honorable Speaker, with those very many remarks, I beg to move and urge members to support all these amendments so that we align the Public Audit Act to the Constitution and also align to what the courts did find as having been unconstitutional. And therefore, beg to move that this Public Audit Act, Public Audit Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 4 of 2024, be read a second time. I beg to move and request the Honorable Naomi Wako, the Deputy Whip and gracious County Women Representative for Marsabit County, potential governor, yes, she's a potential governor for Marsabit County. And I believe members of parliament who transition on to be governors, and you can see from the case example of Governor Gladys Wanga, and of course, women governors or lady governors tend to do better. How I wish Kiambu we could get a lady governor. I don't know who, but Honorable Speaker, I wanted to ask the Honorable Naomi Wako to second.
Honorable Speaker, thank you. I take this opportunity to second, and as I do that, I must appreciate the words of wisdom from our majority leader on women leadership. He has always done it, and he will continue to support women until we achieve our goal. Honorable Speaker, looking at this amendment bill, Public Audit Amendment Bill 2024, National Assembly, is one of the best, and our very able majority leader has taken us through it and has moved it in a very able way. And from his words, we can clearly see that once we approve this and we all debate, we are giving the Office of the Auditor General the power that it needs. We are empowering the office so that the Public Audit Act can be exercised and the Public Audit Act that was unconstitutional can be relevant now. Honorable Speaker, looking at Clause 6, the High Court, in declaring the provision unconstitutional, reasoned that Section 4(2) of the Act resulted in unconstitutional effect by reducing the constitutional office of the Auditor General into statutory office, which must have affected the office negatively. But once we do this, then we will empower this office, and the office will run smoothly, will be effective, and will also help the country. Honorable Speaker, the Clause 2 of the bill contains amendment, divination in alignment with the new proposal, and some of these divinations are accounting officers, Auditor General, effectiveness, lawful, public entity, and once we do this, Honorable Speaker, then we will be able to have accountability. We will be able to have qualified people in the office. Honorable Speaker, in some of our government offices, the challenge we have is we have people who are not qualified for that particular offices. And if we have the right people, people who are qualified, the accountants, people who are professionals, then they can bring their professionalism into this, and in the Office of Auditor General, we will be able to account and be the good stewards that we need. Honorable Speaker, number 7, Clause 4 of the bill amends Section 5 of the Act, qualification for appointment as Auditor General, which includes additional qualification requirement, and that is a practicing member of good standing of professional body of accounting. Honorable Speaker, most of the time we have public servants who have been in corruption, who have been identified, who have corruption cases. And why we suffer as a country is because we keep having, we keep bringing back the people who have bad records. And if we have practicing member of good standing of professional body of accounting, then we will have taken care of this and we will have safeguarded that office. Again, Honorable Speaker, I support and second this because under number 9, Clause 6 of the Bill 6 to repeal Section 8 of the Act, administrative powers of the Office of Auditor General. And number 1 under that is developing an organizational structure and staff establishment for the Office of Auditor General. Number 2 is recruiting and promoting qualified and competent staff, which most of the time is not the case. And I would also want to say, in any establishment of any office and any recruiting of any members of staff, let us have the face of this country. Many are the times the marginalized are not seen. We have qualified people, but when you go to these offices, it is limited to only very few. And I would suggest that any office under any ministry should have the face of Kenya and have people with good standing. Honorable Speaker, again, number 11, Clause 8, the bill proposes to amend Section 11 of the Act, vacancy in the office, by providing for conditions under which the positions of Auditor General shall fall vacant, and proposes the filling it for clarity. Honorable Speaker, any gap creates a lot of problems in any institution, and we cannot afford to have any gap in the Office of Auditor General. And once now we have this in place, this amendment in place, then there will be no lacuna. We will fill the office as soon as possible, and the continuation of the work will pick, and it will be good. Again, Honorable Speaker, before I conclude, number 12 and Clause 9 of the Bill 6 to repeal Section 14, developing and approval of organizational structure. This is also very important, Honorable Speaker, because we need to have a proper structure in place for the organization to move and for the organization to be effective and relevant also depending on what is happening in the country. Honorable Speaker, number 2020, number 18, clause number 18 of clause 18 repeals section 26 of the Act, Meeting and Procedures of Audit Advisory Board. It clarifies that the quorum to be 3 members instead of 5. Honorable Speaker, sometimes when you have 5 members, it affects, because when you do not get to the quorum, the meeting aborts and it affects the effectiveness of that organization. Bringing the quorum to 3 is advantageous in many ways, and also it improves the effectiveness, and the meeting can take place from time to time. And that is why it is good to have the members, the quorum from 5 to 3. Honorable Speaker, number 22, clause 25, amends section 36 of the Act performance, and it introduces progressive changes. First, it expands the scope of performance audit, and then second, it replaces public money with public resources, which is broader, and thirdly, it proposes that performance audits should be done at any time after completion of any national or county project. This is very important, Honorable Speaker, because after any completion of national or county project, then we will not have long time, and people will be, you know, the project is fresh and everything is fresh. People will be able to debate, people will be able to bring out everything depending on how the project has been taken and what has happened, and this will also help us in accountability, and also help any contractor to finish the project on time and also be accountable enough. With those many remarks, Honorable Speaker, I fully second and support. Thank you.
Honorable members, I now propose the question that the Public Audit Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 4 of 2024, be read a second time. Next order. Honorable Mwenje, you want to say something? You have a point of order? Okay, proceed.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I rise to support this motion, which, Honorable Speaker, I've had an advantage of looking at the ruling. Honorable Speaker, that ruling, I believe, set a very dangerous precedent, Honorable Speaker. If I'm not wrong, that ruling set us on a path where if matters are not audited on time and debated in Parliament on time, then those reports become irrelevant regardless of what they contain. Therefore, it exposed us to loss of financial, public money, and therefore it is important to pass this bill. Honorable Speaker, one of the things, and I believe the members of the PAC and PIC committees, I'm seeing one of my members, Honorable Sigei here, who they ought to be listening to this issue. I've noticed, Honorable Speaker, that under Section 48 of this bill, it has referenced that it is within a period of 6 months after the end of each financial year that the auditor must report. Honorable Speaker, I was in a meeting with the Auditor General, and one of the discussions we had was that they must be able to report to the House within a period when we are sitting as a House, Honorable Speaker. Hopefully, if they can do it earlier, they can do it within three or 4 months, so that they report to the House by around October. And during that period, while the House is sitting in the month of October, month of November, because we also have only another 3 months. And after that period, that those, based on the
ruling that was delivered by the courts, then those reports become irrelevant. And that means somebody can get away with it. If you were to follow what happened here with this specific ruling, which was against Nairobi County, this was the case where timelines, somebody was purely relying on timelines, on a mere technicality, so as to get away from the recommendations that were made by the County Public Investment Committee of Nairobi. Honorable Speaker, I just want to support this issue that has been raised even by the majority leader regarding some of these roads and infrastructure that are being done by the county. Honorable Speaker, we need the Auditor General to audit properly some of these projects. Honorable Speaker, the other day in one of my wards in Molen, at the area called Moja 3, my residents went onto the road and blocked the entire Kangundo Road because of a sewer line that was affecting them. And Honorable Speaker, some of these projects, which I believe the county governments have been trying to push to do, even here in Nairobi, we must say that it is only Kera, Kura, and Kena that are able to do some of them. Honorable Speaker, some of the even infrastructure that was done by the City Council back in the 90s has remained largely the same until today. It is only the likes of Kera and Kura who are coming to refurbish and improve some of these infrastructure. And this is where you can see, even with the reports of the Auditor General, that they are able to clear quite a number of these projects that have been done by national government, but quite a number that have been done by the county government. We have a serious problem with some of them. And this is where we need even the Senate to be keen on some of these projects that are done by county governments. We need the Public Accounts Committee, Public Investments Committee to audit some of these projects, and they will find there's a very big problem with the county governments. But otherwise, I don't want to say much on this issue. I believe by failure to pass this bill, we was putting us in danger, and it is important to notify the House that as a result of this ruling, Honorable Speaker, it means we need to be up to date. Audit committees need to be up to date with the financial year. Right now, every audit committee, whether it's PIC, whether it's PAC, should be getting ready to audit the reports of 2023-2024. Because the ones that some of our committees are looking at, 2021, 2022, 2023, those ones, as per this proposed law, means that those ones have already been overtaken. In fact, one of the things that we asked the Auditor General was to appeal this specific ruling. Because if we allow this ruling to go as it is, without setting aside those orders, it means some of the work that the public investment, the PIC committees, the PAC committees have been doing, it means all those reports for 2021, 2022, 2023 are now time-barred. It means you cannot take any action against any perpetrators that we find. So, Honorable Speaker, it is important that we pass this bill as it is, but I would also suggest heavily that the Committee of Justice and the one led by, what's it called, Honorable Speaker, I've forgotten this committee that deals with all legal matters here. They need to, Honorable Speaker, to ensure that they've liaised with the Auditor General's office, ensure that we've appealed this specific ruling so it doesn't lock us, we who serve in some of these audit committees, so that our reports are rendered useless, and then we end up giving people who've stolen public money a chance to just get away based on a technicality. With that, Honorable Speaker, I beg to support.
I think the mover can reply. Honorable Oundo, I think it's only you're the one who's interested. Yes, I'll let you. Then we can have the mover reply.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. From the onset, let me stand to support the bill, Public Audit Amendment Bill 2024. And as I support, I want to draw my experience as a member of Public Accounts Committee since 2020 and the very many interactions I've had with the Auditor General. Honorable Speaker, I do not want to belabor to go through the various provisions as ably moved by the leader of majority party, but allow me, Honorable Speaker, to make a few observations here and there. Number one, Honorable Speaker, ordinarily, in any typical arrangement in any democracy, courts, indirectly, so to speak, actually make laws. Because when they validated any provision of the law, it behooves upon Parliament to therefore enact the law to meet the rulings of the court unless the ruling or the judgment has been appealed against and set aside. So it's a point that the members of public needs to know, the country needs to know, and my colleagues who are here needs to put that behind their mind, because that's almost some of the basic courses we are taught at the university, that one of the process of making laws is through the courts. Honorable Speaker, therefore, it's in that background that we are here today to review the Audit Act, Public Audit Act, in response to a court order issued in a case that has been cited in the memorandum and memorandum of objects and reasons. That's the case between Transparency International versus Attorney General and Auditor General. Honorable Speaker, I just also want to pick up a few issues. By amendments being done under Clause 2 on the interpretation, Honorable Speaker, we now create Office of the Auditor General, which means an independent Office of the Auditor General incorporated in accordance with Article 253 of the Constitution of Kenya. Honorable Speaker, under Article 15, they mention several independent offices and constitutional commissions that ought to be body corporates. And those ones obviously include the Office of the Auditor General. And so on this wisdom therefore, Honorable Speaker, we are creating the Office of the Auditor General as distinct from the Auditor General that is set out in the Constitution of Kenya. In essence, Honorable Speaker, we are literally enhancing the power and authority of that particular office to be more than just a mere constitutional office, but a body corporate capable of suing and being sued, holding assets and the related issues. Honorable Speaker, I would then therefore, and a distinction must be drawn here, Honorable Speaker, is only the Auditor General who can append a signature on audit of public funds. It's only the Auditor General. Regardless that we are creating the Office of the Auditor General, it's only the Auditor General appointed under Article 2229 who can actually append the signature on audit reports. So therefore, it is important that distinction is drawn. We have no issues at all. Honorable Speaker, I really find Clause 8 that seeks to amend Section 11B, Section 11, by inserting Section 1A, to be, Honorable Speaker, to be superfluous. And I hope the majority leader would listen to this, so that when we are going to the Committee of the Whole House, he says so that we do not. Honorable Speaker, the appointing authority for the Auditor General is the President with approval of Parliament. Approval of Parliament is the President. I find the provisions under Clause 8B to be superfluous and unnecessary. And Honorable Speaker, this is what it reads. Where the term of the office of the Auditor General is due to expire, the Auditor General shall notify the appointing authority in writing of the contemplated vacancy 3 months prior to the expiry of the term. The import of that provision, Honorable Speaker, one, is that the appointing authority cannot remember the day they appointed and when the term of 8 years is coming to an end. Then that will mean, Honorable Speaker, is that the dereliction of duty by the person who is supposed to do this administrative chores for the President, whom we passed a bill here, the head of public service. I find this superfluous, unnecessary, and generally, what are you telling the people of Kenya? And what happens if the Auditor General himself or herself does not define or does not notify the appointing authority? What happens? Are there any sanctions? Are there any penalties? Hoping time will allow, this is an amendment that we need to drop, because the President, who is the appointing authority, ought to have records. And that should be a checklist every year or every month that I have to perform the XY duty, which he has done to do it. Again, Honorable Speaker, when you go to clause 19 that purports to amend section 14 of the Act, is again duplication. It duplicates clause 6, which already provides for develop an organizational structure and staff establishment for the Office of Auditor General. Honorable Speaker, where I find fairly interesting, and I don't know what was the thing of the drafters, is the question of appointment of the Deputy Auditor General. Yes, we know the Office of Auditor General is a constitutional office, but the moment we have made it body corporate, Honorable Speaker, it therefore means it ceases to be an individual. The only constitutional mandate the Auditor General has is to sign the audit reports. The Auditor General will be a conflict of interest, appointing his or her own deputy without due process. Honorable Speaker, the question would ask, if that's the case then, why not then the Auditor General and the Deputy Auditor General serve for the same term, so that if the Auditor General is leaving, the assistant or the Deputy Auditor General lives with him or her at the same time. The term ends together. What happens if the Auditor General appoints the deputy 2 months before departure, before the end of the term, and leaves the incoming Auditor General with a headache in his hands or her hands? As I conclude, Honorable Speaker, I want to raise where the minority whip has stated. There is a court case that has ruled under HCAGR 0E082 of 2023 that has ruled that if Parliament does not approve the audit report within 3 months, that report is rendered redundant, useless, and incapable of being acted upon. That calls upon the House to make sure it prioritizes the process of completing, approving the audit reports. Otherwise, then the exercise we are undertaking now will be another exercise in futility. With those few remarks, Honorable Speaker, I support, and I hope we'll be given adequate time to review so that we can present amendments in the committee of the whole House. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
To reply? Move to reply.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, let me thank the members who have contributed on this bill. And as they've all said, this is a very critical bill at this time, especially in relation to not just aligning the provisions of the Public Audit Act to what the court said and to the Constitution, but also in ensuring that we have a Public Audit Act that ensures that public resources are utilized, as many of the speakers have said, in an effective and efficient manner, and in a way that we ensure that there is economic value to the people of Kenya. Honorable Speaker, let me thank them all and say we will be lining up this bill for a committee of the whole, and some of the few issues that reservations that I've had from the speakers, we will ensure and encourage even those who are not here to look at the bill and see what else that we can do to enrich it further, to ensure that the amendments that we bring in the committee of the whole only further enrich this public audit bill and the Public Audit Act. Honorable Speaker, with those few remarks, I beg to reply.
Honorable members, I now put the question that the Public Audit Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 4 of 2024 be read a second time. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Your point of order, Honorable Majority Leader.
A bill for an act of parliament to amend the Public Audit Act 2015 and for connected purposes.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. beg your indulgence to move a short procedural motion. Looking at the time, it's 5 o'clock, Honorable Speaker, and the next order of business in Committee of the Whole, the Cooperative Bill, Bill number 7 of 2024, is quite a heavy bill. And looking at the time being 5 o'clock and the House is supposed to adjourn at 7, I beg to move that pursuant to the provision of Standing Order 33A, this House resolve to extend its sitting until conclusion of business appearing under Order number 12. And that Order number 12 is a Committee of the Whole, so that at least by the time we adjourn, we'll have finished with the Committee of the Whole House. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
I now put the question that the House on Order number 12, Committee of the Whole House on the Cooperatives Bill, National Assembly Bill number 7, 2024, proceeds until completion. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as that of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
Order number 12, Committee of the Whole House.
Honorable members, we may take our seats. Very well, order members, and we are in the committee stage on the Cooperative Bill, National Assembly Bill number 7 of 2024.
Clauses 3 and 4.
I propose the question that clauses 3 and 4 be part of the bill. There are no amendments on this one. I now put the question that clauses 3 and 4 be part of the bill. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as of contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
Clause 5.
I propose the question that clause 5 be part of the bill. Yes, there's an amendment, Chair.
Thank you. I propose that the amendment be as it appears in the order paper, and the justification is that the committee resolved to introduce a subclause to provide that all SACCO societies shall be registered and regulated under the Cooperatives Act, and where there is a conflict in the laws, the Cooperatives Act shall apply.
I propose the question that clause 5 be amended as proposed by the Chair.
Put the question.
I now put the question that clause 5 be amended as proposed by the Chair. Will as many as without opinion say aye? Will as many as of contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. I now put the question that clause 5 as amended be part of the bill. Will as many as without opinion say aye? Will as many as of contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
Clauses 6 and 7.
I propose the question that clauses 6 and 7 be part of the bill. No amendments. I now put the question that clauses 6 and 7 be part of the bill. Will as many as without opinion say aye? Will as many as of contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
Clause 8.
I propose the question that clause 8 be part of the bill. Chair, is there an amendment?
Yes, clause 8. I propose that the clause 8 be as it appears in the order paper, and the justification is that the proposal resolves to delete the clauses 8.2 and 13.2b on the grounds that the professional bodies that exist are not registered with the Registrar of Societies and therefore should not be used to discriminate persons who may qualify for appointment as the Commissioner or County Director for Cooperatives. Thank you.
I propose the question that clause 8 be amended as proposed by the chair. I now put the question that clause 8 be amended as proposed by the chair. Will as many of that opinion say aye? Will as many of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. I now put the question that clause 8 as amended be part of the bill. Will as many of that opinion say aye? Will as many of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
Clause 9.
I propose the question that clause 9 be part of the bill.
I beg to move that clause 9 be amended as it appears in the order paper, and the justification is that the committee considered submissions from the public and resolved to sponsor this amendment to clarify the commissioner that the commissioner shall register cooperatives and the county directors for cooperatives shall regulate the operations of cooperatives in the various counties respectively. Thank you.
Honourable members, I propose the question that clause 9 be amended as proposed by the chair. I now put the question that clause 9 be amended as proposed by the chair. Will as many of that opinion say aye? Will as many of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. I now put the question that clause 9 as amended be part of the bill. Will as many of that opinion say aye? Will as many of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
Clauses 10 and 11.
I propose the question that clauses 10 and 11 be part of the bill. There are no amendments, honourable members, and now put the question that clauses 10 and 11 be part of the bill. Will as many of that opinion say aye? Will as many of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
Clause 12.
I propose the question that clause 12 be part of the bill.
Thank you. I propose that clause 12 be as amended as it appears in the order paper, and the justification is that the minimum qualifications for appointment.
Chair, please always capture the word amended.
As amended, yes, amended. And the proposal is that the minimum qualifications for appointment as technical staff in the office of the County Director of Cooperatives. I submit.
Honourable members, I propose the question that clause 12 be amended as proposed by the chair. Yes, Leader.
Honourable Speaker, I wanted to support. Honourable Speaker, if you look at clause 12, it is giving the responsibility to the County Public Service Board to appoint such number of technical officers to the office of the County Director for Cooperatives. Honourable Speaker, the fallacy you find with many of our county governments and these county public service boards is that people resort to appointing people on the basis of whether they support the governors in the county. And you find so many people being appointed to very important offices who do not qualify. And I think I want to support the committee's position that all these technical officers being appointed by the County Public Service Board must, and the word is shall, have relevant academic qualifications, competencies, and experience in cooperative management practice, because you cannot supervise the running of cooperatives if you do not know how they should be managed. And to improve on the governance of our cooperatives across the board, whether it's in the dairy sector, coffee, or tea, is important that those who are supervising them or superintending over the management and governance of these cooperatives are people who have relevant skills and qualifications, to avoid the position where county service boards go to the villages because Mr. Kimani Ichung'wah is a very good supporter of the governor or the local MCA, is a class 8 dropout or a class 7 dropout with no relevant skills and experience in that area. They are appointed to those boards, Honourable Speaker. And you find many county public service boards appointing the hecklers in their towns and villages to very important positions. Therefore, it's important what the committee is doing to ensure that they appoint people who have relevant skills and training in the particular sector. And I support, Honourable Speaker.
Very well. I now put the question that clause 12 be amended as proposed by the chair. Will as many as without opinion say aye? Will as many as of contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. I now put the question that clause 12 as amended be part of the bill. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Will as many as of contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
Clause 13.
I propose the question that clause 13 be part of the bill.
I beg to move that clause 13 be amended as it appears in the order paper, and the justification is that the bodies that are being referred to do not exist, and therefore that would discriminate qualifications. Thank you.
I now propose the question that clause 13 be amended as proposed by the chair. Honorable members, I now put the question that clause 13 be amended as proposed by the chair. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Will as many as of contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. I now put the question that clause 13 as amended be part of the bill. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Will as many as of contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
Clause 14.
I propose the question that clause 14 be part of the bill.
I propose that the clause 14 be amended as it appears in the order paper, and the justification for that is that the submissions from the public resolved that the sponsor of this amendment to clarify the commissioner shall register cooperatives, and the county should operate, should only or regulate the cooperatives. Thank you.
I propose the question that clause 14 be amended as proposed by the chair. I now put the question that clause 14 be amended as proposed by the chair. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Will as many as of contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. I now put the question that clause 14 as amended be part of the bill. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Will as many as of contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
Clause 15.
I propose the question that clause 15 be part of the bill.
Chair, we propose that clause 15 be amended as it appears in the order paper, and the justification is to provide to allow counties to submit audited reports every 5 months after the financial year ends. Thank you.
I propose the question that clause 15 be amended as proposed by the chair. I now put the question that clause 15 be amended as proposed by the chair. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Will as many as of contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. I now put the question that clause 15 as amended be part of the bill. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Will as many as of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
Clause 16.
I propose the question that clause 6. No, take that again.
Clause 16.
I propose the question that clause 16 be part of the bill. There's no amendment. I now put the question that clause 16 be part of the bill. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Will as many as of contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
17.
I propose the question that clause 17 be part of the bill. Chair.
Chair, I propose that clause 17 be amended to as it appears in the order paper, and the justification is that this amendment will provide the forum that shall act as a mechanism for alternative dispute resolution amongst members of the technical committee.
I propose the question that clause 17 be amended as proposed by the chair. I now put the question that clause 17 be amended as proposed by the chair. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Will as many as of contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. I now put the question that clause 17 as amended be part of the bill. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Will as many as of contrary opinion say nay? Ayes have it.
Clauses 18 and 19.
I propose the question that clauses 18 and 19 be part of the bill. There are no amendments to these, honorable members. I now put the question that clauses 18 and 19 be part of the bill. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Will as many as of contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
Clause 20.
I propose the question that clause 20 be part of the bill. Move on.
Thank you, Chair. I propose that we amend clause 20 as it appears in the order paper, and this is to help provide or ensure that persons who apply for membership to more than one primary cooperative disclose their membership and financial liability to the Commissioner and to the prospective cooperatives.
Honorable members, I propose the question that clause 20 be amended as proposed by the chair. Honorable members, I now put the question that clause 20 be amended as proposed by the chair. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Will as many as of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. I now put the question that clause 20 as amended be part of the bill. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Will as many as of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
Clause 21.
I propose the question that clause 21 be part of the bill. Is there an amendment on this one? Chair.
Chair, I propose that clause 21 be amended as it appears in the order paper, and the justification is that the cooperatives may not be registered under one for the purposes of without any approval by the commissioner. Thank you.
I propose the question that clause 21 be amended as proposed by the chair. I now put the question that clause 21 be amended as proposed by the chair. Will as many as without opinion say aye? Will as many as with contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. I now put the question that clause 21 as amended be part of the bill. Will as many as without opinion say aye? Will as many as with contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
Clause 22.
I propose the question that clause 22 be part of the bill.
Chair, I propose that clause 22 be amended as it appears on the order paper, and the justification is that membership of a secondary cooperative should be in compliance with clause 29 of the same cooperative bill.
Honorable members, I propose the question that clause 22 be amended as proposed by the mover. Honorable members, I now put the question that clause 22 be amended as proposed by the chair. Will as many as without opinion say aye? Will as many as of contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. I now put the question that clause 22 as amended be part of the bill. Will as many as without opinion say aye? Will as many as of contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
Clause 23.
I propose the question that clause 23 be part of the bill. Mover.
Thank you, Chair. That I propose that that clause 23 be amended as it appears in the order paper, and this is to allow a cooperative federation to comply with clause 29 of this act, and also to make it easier for a group of persons to form a cooperative, reducing the threshold that currently exists from 25 to 20 persons. Thank you.
Very well. I propose the question that clause 23 be amended as proposed by the chair. I now put the question that clause 23 be amended as proposed by the chair. Will as many as without opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as with contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. I now put the question that clause 23 as amended be part of the bill. Will as many as without opinion say aye? Will as many as with contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
Clauses 24, 25, and 26.
I propose the question that clauses 24, 25, and 26 be part of the bill. Honorable members, there are no amendments on this one, and therefore I now put the question that clauses 24, 25, and 26 be part of the bill. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Will as many as of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
Clause 27.
I propose the question that clause 27 be part of the bill. Mover.
Thank you. I propose that clause 27 be amended as it appears in the order paper, and the justification for it is that this is to make it, to make it clear and comply with drafting style as per the National Assembly. Thank you.
I propose the question that clause 27 be amended as proposed by the mover. Honorable members, I now put the question that clause 27 be amended as proposed by the mover. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Will as many as of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. I now put the question that clause 27 as amended be part of the bill. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Will as many as of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
Clause 28.
I propose the question that clause 28 be part of the bill. Mover. Oh, there's no amendment, and therefore proceed to put the question that clause 28 be part of the bill. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Will as many as of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
Clause 29.
I propose the question that clause 29 be part of the bill.
Chair, I propose that clause 29 be amended as it appears in the order paper, and the justification for this was to correct grammatical errors that were there in the subclause 1B, and to provide minimum number of persons required to register
as a primary cooperative to be 20 members, and for the secondary cooperative should be 5 primary cooperatives. Thank you.
Honourable members, I propose the question that clause 29 be amended as proposed by the mover. Please, you are in order now that I've proposed. You may proceed and speak on this.
Chair, I just wanted the chair to clarify, just for clarity, when she says that 5 cooperatives, do those 5 cooperatives have a minimum threshold in terms of how many members in each of the cooperatives should comprise the 5?
Thank you, Chair. The primary cooperative shall have 20 members. So, and we are saying 5 primary cooperatives can form a secondary cooperative, meaning that if every primary cooperative has a minimum of 20, then the 5 will be 20 times 5, which is 100 members. That is the minimum a secondary cooperative should have, because the primary cooperative has a minimum already of 20 members.
Very well, honourable members. I now put the question that clause 29 be amended as proposed by the chair. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Will as many as of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. And now put the question that clause 29 as amended be part of the bill. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Will as many as of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
Clause 30.
I propose the question that clause 30 be part of the bill. Chair.
Thank you. I propose that we amend clause 30 to, as it appears in the order paper, and the justification is that to provide that a cooperative may not be registered under more than one purpose without approval of the commissioner.
Honourable members, I propose the question that clause 30 be amended as proposed by the chair. Very well. Yes, honourable member.
Chair, you'll allow me to still come back to the chair of the committee representing the amendments to clarify to us whether there is a criteria the commissioner may use to approve or disapprove.
Chair, under clause 20, we have created various types of cooperatives. Like, for example, we have a producer cooperative, housing cooperative, transport cooperative, worker cooperative, and those kind of cooperatives. So, under this particular clause, we are saying that a member or a cooperative cannot be in more than one cooperative unless the commissioner approves which type of cooperative, because that clarification or justification in terms of cooperatives has already been taken care of under clause 20.
Yes, Honourable Undo.
I just want to educate our members that, yes, there ought to be a criteria, but that will fall within regulations. You can't regulate even the minor details, but we need to give the discretion or some powers to the commissioner that whenever there is a conflict, they can administratively solve it without going to rigorous processes, but they will be in the regulations. Thank you, Honourable Chair.
Chair, you know, I need to be on record.
Order, Honourable Choma, please. You may proceed, but Chair, please approach the table as you proceed.
Chair, I want to be on record that the reason why we were so earnestly looking for this cooperative bill is because of the mess that the cooperative commissioners have caused in our primary cooperatives. We have had a lot of issues, a lot of irregularities, lack of standards, and other processes that have been supervised by commissioners within our cooperatives. We've lost a lot of money, a lot of assets belonging to primary cooperatives, producer cooperatives, under the sanction of the same commissioner. So if we do not really assert on matters of regulations, what is the criteria? We must make sure that we protect our farmers, especially producers, from the extremes that we have registered in the past. Chair, just to move you a little bit, I know I'm not supposed to be debating, but there are some cooperatives whose money have gotten lost from their accounts under the sanction of the same cooperative commissioners. So how do you then make a new law and still accommodate them and give them the same power they had? And that was the spirit of the new cooperative bill. So we must be clear. If you are giving them power to authorize, to what extent? And that is what Honorable Udo is saying. Otherwise, you are going to get ourselves back to where we were. The reason why most of the farmers have lost their assets and properties is because somebody sanctioned in the name of commissioners. How do we tame them so that they do not overuse the power we give them through this bill? Otherwise, it will be retrogressive for us to have a new cooperative bill and still give the same offenders an opportunity to repeat the offense.
Honorable Mchomba, we hear you very well and you are very clear. Honorable Undo, yes.
That's why this is where laws are made, this particular time. Any other and second stage is gumzo mtaani, but laws are made here. But let me just try to let the member. Can you ask the member to pay attention, because then I'll be talking.
Honorable Mchomba, you are arguing very well, and Oundo would want you to hear him on this.
It's a banter of people from Kiambu, members from Kiambu.
Proceed, Oundo.
You know that in a banter, members of Kiambu. Honorable Mchomba, when you look at the national cooperative policy that we passed in the last parliament, was actually to address the fears you are raising. And the fears you are raising is that there used to be briefcase promoters of cooperative societies who would go for gullible members, register here, register here, register here, and hoping and understanding that the principle of cooperative is people of common bond, with a common bond, and democratic rights to vote whichever they want. So essentially, what we are saying, that the commissioner has got somebody can apply for exemption, but that exemption is going to be guided based on the regulations. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, if the Honorable Member can look at that amendment and at clause 30, subsection 3, it will clearly explain the regulations will set out procedures where the exemption can be granted and where the exemption can be denied. It's unfortunate that she's busy, we can proceed.
Chair.
I think I'd wish to further comment that if you look at the current cooperatives, you find instances where somebody registers a cooperative. Like, I think there are instances where people have lost money, like a Chesa Sacco, where people register for the sole purposes of trying to get money or trying to get to con or connive the common mwananchi. And therefore, what we are trying to say is, if there is a cooperative that already exists doing the same objects, then we do not need to register another cooperative to do the same kind of business. I'll give you an example. In my constituency, we grow tea. So if there is a cooperative that is already a tea growing cooperative, then we don't need to register another cooperative of a tea growing with the same membership, because that would mean that this other cooperative would be for the purposes of going to con members. And that is the reason why we are saying, for such kind of scenarios where there already exists another cooperative, the commissioner will come in to come and look at why are we trying to create another cooperative when there exists another one. That is the only power we are giving to the commissioner, to be able to ensure that the unsuspecting mwananchi are not conned through the process of creating cooperatives just for the purposes of people swindling monies of unsuspecting mwananchi. Thank you.
Very well. So these powers are specific to registration of new cooperatives,
yes,
not members. But
yes,
let me hear
new cooperatives.
Anthony Luoch.
Yes.
Chair, thank you very much. While we were doing public participation on this matter, one of the key issues that came up was the question of trying to straighten up questions of governance within cooperatives themselves. And I think this is one of the key issues that the Cooperative Commissioner is trying to do, so that we try to make cooperatives sustainable and economically viable. So this is one of the reasons why, after extensive public participation, these powers was given to the Commissioner, so that we try to delimit boundaries and say, if commission or other cooperative X already exists, let everybody, say T, belong to that one cooperative instead of having fragmented cooperatives which may eventually lead to small cooperatives which are not sustainable. So I think for that reason we should support these amendments.
Very well, very well. Honorable members, you still have 1 minute because we heard you extensively.
Chair, I ask to be forgiven for bringing this issue so heavily because
there's no forgiveness here. Just state your point.
Pardon me for reprojecting the issue. You know, the issue that has been there, the issue that we wanted to sort once and for all through making this law, is the issue of somebody coming up with a cooperative society, fleece Kenyans' money, then after 2 years, deregisters the cooperative and registers the same cooperative. So this is what I want an assurance from, that for me to support this, that problem is going to be sorted.
Honorable Mchomba, I was a keen follower of this debate, and I'm a very interested person. And they have explained very keenly and very well when you are talking to the leader of majority that that's exactly what they have corrected. Honorable members, allow me to now put the question that clause 30 be amended as proposed by the chair. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Will as many as of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. I now put the question that clause 30 as amended be part of the bill. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Will as many as of contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
Clauses 31, 32, 33, 34, and 35.
I propose the question that clauses 31, 32, 33, 34, and 35 be part of the bill. Honorable members, there are no amendments on these ones, and therefore proceed to put the question that clauses 31, 32, 33, 34, and 35 be part of the bill. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Will as many as of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
Clause 36.
I propose the question that clause 36 be part of the bill. Mover.
Thank you. I propose that clause 36 be amended as it appears in the order paper, and this is basically for redrafting to make it clear, especially on the word corporate body, to bring consistency and clarity in the bill.
I propose the question that clause 36 be amended as proposed by the mover. I now put the question that clause 36 be amended as proposed by the mover. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Will as many as of contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. I now put the question that clause 36 as amended be part of the bill. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Will as many as of contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
Clauses 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, and 43.
Honorable members, I propose the question that clauses 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, and 43 be part of the bill. Honorable members, there are no amendments on this one, and therefore proceed to put the question that clauses 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, and 43 be part of the bill. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Will as many as of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
Clause 44.
I propose the question that clause 44 be part of the bill. Mover.
Thank you. I propose that clause 44 be amended as it appears in the order paper. And basically this amendment is to delete the words or the board of directors, subject to ratification by members at a general meeting. And this amendment is therefore to prevent misuse of power to ratify at the AGM. Thank you.
I propose the question that clause 44 be amended as proposed by the mover. I now put the question that clause 44 be amended as proposed by the mover. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as of a contrary opinion say nay? I now put the question that clause 44 as amended be part of the bill. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
Clauses 45 and 46.
I propose the question that clauses 45 and 46 be part of the bill. I now put the question that clauses 45 and 46 be part of the bill. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Honorable members, there were no amendments on clauses 45 and 46.
Clause 47.
I propose the question that clause 47 be part of the bill. Mover.
Thank you, Chair. I propose that clause 47 be amended as it appears in the order paper, and this is basically to provide to remove we are deleting this clause so that we remove the limitation of membership to producer cooperatives, as it is just discriminatory. It's only mentioning one type of cooperative.
I propose the question that clause 47 be amended as proposed by the mover. I now put the question that clause 47 be amended as proposed by the mover. Will as many as of that opinion say aye. Will as many as of the contrary opinion say nay. The ayes have it. I proceed to put the question that clause 47 as amended be part of the bill. Will as many as of that opinion say aye. Will as many as of the contrary opinion say nay. The ayes have it.
Clauses 48 and 49.
I propose the question that clauses 48 and 49 be part of the bill. Honourable members, there are no amendments. I therefore put the question that clauses 48 and 49 be part of the bill. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Will as many as of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
Clause 50.
I propose the question that clause 50 be part of the bill. Mover.
Thank you, Chair. I propose that clause 50 be amended as it appears on the order paper. And basically, this amendment is to provide for compliance with the Data Protection Act.
I propose the question that clause 50 be amended as proposed by the mover. Proceed, Honourable Wamachomba.
Chair, allow me to thank the chairperson of this committee and the committee that found it worth to bring this kind of amendment. I fully support. In the past, producers' cooperatives have had their information leaked to circles, lenders, commercial ventures, suppliers, to fleece producers, societies, and cooperatives their money. So this is very, very good. I am one of those that made the Data Protection Act in 2019 in the previous parliament, and I'm happy that we are aligning to the act. Thank you.
Honourable Anthony Lodge.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. And then once again, this was one of the concerns during the public participation on how data can be misused, and therefore we considered it necessary that we insert a provision that data be protected. I also want to join Honourable Wanamuchomba, with whom I served in the ICT committee last parliament, where the Data Protection Act was put in place. This is a progressive move, and it is in line with our current laws. I support.